Efendim hayırlı sabahlar. Good morning everybody. Dear Chancellor, my respected professors, valuable guests and colleagues, welcome. We are thankful for your presence here at the International Sufi Studies Graduate Student Symposium held during the Sufi Studies Week at Üsküdar University. Before beginning our program, I ask that everybody please stand for a minute of silence in honor of our soldiers and of the founder of the Turkish Republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, and then for the Turkish National Anthem. Efendim programımıza başlamadan önce salonumuzda bulunan tüm misafirlerimizi önce mübarek şehitlerimiz ve Türkiye Cumhuriyeti'nin kurucusu Mustafa Kemal Atatürk'ün aziz ruhları huzurunda bir dakikalık saygı duruşunda bulunmaya ve İstiklal Marşımızı söylemeye davet ediyoruz. Thank you. We will now watch a short promotional clip about Üsküdar University. Üsküdar Üniversitesi ile alakalı kısa bir film seyredeceğiz şimdi efendim.
Bu serüvene bir iddiamız var diyerek başladık. İtiraf edelim, biz bilimde büyük iddiaları severiz. İnsanı anlamaya çalışmak gibi mesela. Ya da bilim üretirken ilkeleri gerçekleştirmek gibi. Bu iddialarımızın en zorlu olanıysa insanı anlama çabamız. Bunun farkındayız. En başından beri insanı anlama isteğimiz, davranış bilimleri alanındaki çalışmalarımızın temeliydi. Ve bu bilimsel bakışı Türkiye'ye yaymak, genç nesillere aktarmak, dünyaya anlatmak, bir ekol oluşturmak, hatta üniversite kurmak bizi en çok heyecanlandıran şey. Şimdi bu heyecanın gerçeğe dönüştüğü noktadayız. 15.000'e yakın öğrencimiz, 350'den fazla akademik kadromuzla bu yolda ilerlerken özgürlükçü, çoğulcu, eşitlikçi, katılımcı olmayı benimsedik. Özgür düşüncenin, katılımcılığın, eşit ve çok sesliliğin olduğu bir ortamda bilim üretmenin önemine inandım. Her şeyden önemlisi, iyi insan olmanın ötesinde bir şey olamayacağı bilincini hep taşıdım. İnsani değerlerin toplumları yücelten, bilimde ve kültürde gelişmesini sağlayan özellikler olduğunu bilerek, toplumu ve insanı anlayan bir sorumlulukla bilim üretiyoruz. 5 yıldır iddialarımızdan ödün vermeden, dünyayı değiştirecek bilimsel projelerin peşindeyiz. Amerika Başkanı Obama'nın başlattığı BRAIN projesinin Türkiye ve Orta Doğu temsilciliğini aldık. Türkiye'nin ilk bilim ve fikir festivalini düzenliyoruz. Nöro pazarlama çalışmalarını ilk başlatan üniversite olarak kaynaklara geçiyoruz. Türkiye'deki ilk tasavvuf araştırmaları enstitüsünü kurarak tasavvufu davranış bilimleri çerçevesinde akademik platforma taşıyoruz. Dünyanın 3. Nöropsikofarmakoloji Araştırma Merkezi'ni kurarak bilimin uygulama alanları içinde önemli adımlar atıyoruz. Pozitif psikolojinin Türkiye'deki ilk akademik uygulayıcısı olarak bilimde uluslararası gelişmelerin ülkemizdeki öncülüğünü yapmaktan gurur duyuyoruz. Üsküdar Üniversitesi Kılıçka Merkezi Brain Park'ta öğrencilerimizin parlak fikirlerini hayata geçirerek bilimi yeni nesillere aktarıyoruz. Bilimsel yayınlarımız ve Ar-Ge çalışmalarımızla geleceğe ışık tutuyoruz. Biz tercihimizi insanı anlamaktan yana kullanıyoruz. Çünkü biz insanı anlayarak dünyayı değiştirebilecek bilim üretmenin inancını taşıyoruz. İnsanı anla, dünyayı değiştir. Üsküdar Üniversitesi.
Teşekkürler. My name is Yekta İnci Zülfikar. I'm a master's student at the Institute for Sufi Studies at Üsküdar University. I will be presenting the program for the duration of the symposium on behalf of the Symposium Organization Committee. Today, various areas of study demonstrate an increased need for each other's methods and thinking styles, which has marked a rise in interdisciplinary studies. The same is true for Sufism. Just as other areas' methods can be brought in order to form a better understanding of Sufism, so can Sufism's methods and thinking styles be used in order to delve deeper into other areas. What Üsküdar University Chancellor Professor Dr. Nevzat Tarhan had said in honor of Meşgule Sargut's Women and Sufism Symposium, organized by our institute last month, still resonates with me. He had said, and I paraphrase, positive psychology is Sufism in a lab coat. It is exactly this, where Sufism is combined with different areas and adapted to the current time. When we begin to comprehend, it is possible to live life through an understanding that constantly changes and renews itself. It was the hope that this understanding would spread that was among the biggest reasons for why we, as students of the Institute, wanted to organize the symposium. Our institute houses students who are professionals from various backgrounds and fields of study, and who are outside of the realm of the divinity school. We are studying and learning here in order to better benefit from the contemplation, tefekkür, that is provided by the area created by a combination of the basic Islamic sciences we study here and the methods that we have previously learned in our respective fields of study. I would like to take this opportunity to respectfully thank Ms. Mahmud Sargut, who, and this institute is her brainchild, our respected Chancellor, Professor Dr. Nevzat Tarhan, for his sharing of Ms. Sargut's vision and allowing for the establishment of the Institute, and for the valuable and impossible to repay efforts that have been expended on us by our esteemed professors on behalf of all of my friends. We hope that the symposium will result in exemplary models for use in forming new methodologies of Sufi studies. It is our wish that the symposium will become an annual event. Günümüzde farklı alanların birbirlerinin yöntemlerine ve düşünce tarzlarına duyduğu ihtiyaç ve disiplinler arası çalışmalar artmaktadır. Tasavvuf için de aynı şey geçerlidir. Nasıl ki tasavvufu daha iyi anlayabilmek için diğer ilimlerin getireceği farklı metotlar vardır, bu alanların da derinine inebilmek için tasavvufa ihtiyaç duyulmaktadır. 10 Şubat 2018'de enstitümüzün düzenlediği Meşgule Sargut hatırasına yapılan Kadın ve Tasavvuf Sempozyumunda Sayın Rektörümüz Profesör Doktor Nevzat Tarhan hocamızın pozitif psikoloji tasavvufun laboratuvar önlüğü giymiş halidir sözündeki gibi farklı alanlarla tasavvufu birleştirerek günümüze uyarlayıp aslında her an değişen ve yenilenen bir anlayışla hayata devam etmenin mümkün olduğunu anlarız. Bu anlayışın artmasını ummamız, sempozyumu düzenlemeyi istememizin en büyük etkenlerinden biri oldu. Enstitümüzde profesyonel hayatın içinden, farklı mesleklerden, çoğunlukla ilahiyat camiasının dışından öğrenciler vardır. Biz burada temel İslam ilimlerinin üstüne kendi ilim veya bilim dallarımızda öğrendiğimiz yöntemlerle alanın bize sunduğu tefekkür imkanlarını değerlendirmek üzere çalışıyoruz. Bu vesileyle enstitümüzün fikir annesi muhterem Cemal Sargut hocamıza, onun vizyonunu paylaşarak enstitümüzün kurulmasını sağlayan Sayın Rektörümüz Profesör Doktor Nevzat Tarhan hocamıza, üzerimizdeki emekleri ve hakları çok olan değerli hocalarımıza huzurunuzda hürmetlerimizle bütün arkadaşlarım adına teşekkür ederim. Tasavvuf çalışmalarında yeni yöntemlerin ortaya çıkartılması için sempozyumumuzun örnek modeller üretmesini dileriz. Bu sempozyumun inşallah her yıl gerçekleşmesi temennimizdir. Today's program is as follows. After the welcoming remarks, there will be 3 opening speeches before noon. The welcoming remarks in our institute's name will be given by Üsküdar University Chancellor Advisor Mr. Mahmud Sargut, followed by Üsküdar University Chancellor Professor Dr. Nevzat Tarhan. Associate Professor Dr. Zeliha Koçak Tufan, a member of the Higher Education Council's Executive Committee, whom we had planned to include in the welcoming speeches part of our program, has arrived in Istanbul from Ankara and is on her way from the airport. When she has safely arrived, we hope to invite her to give her welcoming speech as well. The 3 opening speeches will be given by Professor Kenan Gürsoy, Professor Atif Khalil, and Professor Mahmud Erol Kılıç. Dr. Khalil will give his main lecture tomorrow morning prior to the start of the panel he will chair. Today, he will be speaking about Sufism, moral psychology, and the station of repentance. There will be a break at 12. We would like to have a photo opportunity with all of our guest speakers and then with all of our participants, and would be grateful for your help in this. Saat 12'de verilecek ara öncesinde sahnede bir toplu fotoğraf alacağız. Hocalarımızın ve katılımcılarımızın ilgilerini dileriz. Following the break, the program will resume with Associate Professor Juliana Hammer's keynote speech at 2:30 p.m. The opening panel of the symposium will begin at 3:15. After a short break at the end of the first panel, the last panel of the day will be led by Professor Emine Yeniterzi. After a dinner break, Mr. Mehmet Kemiksiz Sufi music concert will begin at 7:30. We would like to thank our Chancellor, Professor Nevzat Tarhan, for his continued support to the Institute for Sufi Studies, and Chancellor Advisor Mr. Mahmud Sargut, and the esteemed professors of our institute. Our sincere gratitude is also due to those who have contributed to the preparation of this program from Üsküdar University and Kenan Foundation. Tasavvuf Araştırmaları Enstitüsü'nün bugünlere erişmesini sağlayan değerli destekleri için başta üniversitemizin rektörü Sayın Profesör Doktor Nevzat Tarhan hocamıza ve rektör danışmanı Sayın Cemal Nur Sargut hocamıza ve enstitümüzün muhterem hocalarına gönülden teşekkürlerimizi sunarız. Bu programın hazırlanmasında emeği geçen, katkıları olan Üsküdar Üniversitesi'nin ve Kerim Vakfı'nın yetkililerine ve çalışanlarına pek çok teşekkürler ederiz. Now, we will continue our program with welcoming remarks. Şimdi sizleri selamlamak üzere konuşmalarını yapmak için Cemal Nur Sargut hocamızı kürsüye davet ediyorum. Lütfen hocam.
Efendim gördüğünüz gibi Üsküdar Üniversitesi ilkleri
Our university has already been successful in the firsts. Such a great university and has got a very big opening in thoughts. Is the first university that supported me. So I would like to convey my special thanks to Nevzat Hoca. This is the International Sufi Studies MA Student Symposium, is the first in Turkey. This is actually the first across the globe. That's why it's very significant. So many people from various countries, participants from various countries are present here. Both international and national students are given a chance to present papers in this conference. So that's why I would like to convey my thanks to Üsküdar University and especially Elif Hoca, who has enormously served for the realization of the symposium. This symposium, the participants are from Germany, Afghanistan, China, Japan, US, Lebanon, Malaysia, and Turkey. And the total papers are 61. The number of total papers are 61. The Tasawwuf research for Sufi studies has been established in 2001. And we have started first the MA program, and 2007 fall semester we have the first graduates MA graduates of the thesis program. And currently we have 120 students who are participating in the program, and they're doing their thesis. And the first graduates will graduate this semester for the first time. And I'm so happy that for years who have been trained for my Sufi studies are now going to be MA students, MA graduates. Every semester there are 14 courses. Now we have 4 full-time professors. Our most beloved Professor Emine Yeniterzi, Niyazi Beki, Professor Niyazi Beki, Dr. Can Güzel, who has served enormously, and our assistant Eylül. They are all full-time. And we also have 3 part-time who are Derya Baş from Istanbul University Tasavvuf Department, Muhammed Bedirhan from Çanakkale University, and Dilek Güldütuna from Frankfurt Goethe Institute, Goethe University from Tasavvuf Department. And our Professor Zeynep Akay is also very much loved, who teaches Arabic, and she teaches Arabic beautifully to our students. And I actually witnessed how her students spoke Arabic very fluently in Mecca and Medina. In the preparation for scientific studies, we have basic research studies. And Niyazi Beki is giving tefsir and hadith courses. And Lütfen Aziz is giving courses for kelam words. And we also have Islamic philosophy courses. And Mansur Koçinhan also gives Islamic law courses. And we will also have professors coming from US and from other foreign countries. And now we have the presence of Juliana Hammer, who is actually serving enormously, especially against Islamophobia, and she's with us. I'm very, very happy to have her with us. And our international professors, Miriam Cook and Bruce Lawrence, will come this semester, this spring. They will actually be here for 3 weeks for about 42-hour courses. And we will also be able to welcome students from within the country and outside the country from the distant program. And those who are not actually registered as official students will also be able to follow the courses from the internet. And there will also be conferences on various Sufi subjects such as Berzah. So we also have a seminar to the introduction to the thought of Ibn Arabi, and the assistant rector who always supported us, Mahmud Erol Kılıç, will also be presenting seminars and conferences to us. One of the obligatory courses of Tasawwuf studies has been actually carried out like seminar courses with the coordination of Can Güzel, Ercan Alkan, Gülgün Yazıcı, Yağmur Tunalı, Hakan Alvan, Çiçek Derman, Bahat Alman, Ahmet Güner Sayar, Savaş Berkçi, Nurullah Koltaş, and Nurhan Atasoy will be delivering these seminars. And this summer, Tasawwuf Studies Department Institute will actually be conducting summer courses, and the curriculum's elective courses will be including English Tasawwuf texts and the analysis of them. And we will also be having MA programs within the country and outside of the country to be able to contribute to the program. And those students who will come from international universities is Carl Ernst, William Çitik, Sashiko Murata, Professor James Morris, and Mohamed Rüstem will be with us. The summer school will also offer classics in Arabic, Persian, and there will be English texts on Sufi studies, and there will be methods. There will be seminars on Sufi methods, Sufi learning and teaching methods. In 2015, in April, we actually started with 70,000 people for the certificate programs. We have courses such as Introduction to Tasawwuf, and those new certificate programs will be Fususi Hikam readings, Introduction to Tasawwuf. Mahmud Hocam, please forgive us, because with your presence, it would be much better. We also actually offer a course which is most liked and most favorable, which is on the readings of movies, and movies such as Matrix, Avatar are actually analyzed through the eyes of Tasawwuf, and this is a certificate program, and that's why people from outside of the program can come. Approaches towards Sufi studies. So all these courses could actually be distantly accessible. From the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have actually signed a contract which will take for about an hour. We have done that. This is the two bridges of the East. And this is from Kyoto University.
Gerçekleştirildi. Burada bulunan da öğrencilerimiz 5 doktora öğrencisi enstitüde bütün yaz eğitim programına katıldı. Öğrenciler Türkiye'de yaptıkları çalışmalarda araştırma konularına göre bildiri hazırladılar. Bu öğrencilerimiz Türkçe biliyorlar ve Osmanlı arşivlerini tarayarak eski mutasavvıfları araştırıp muazzam sunumlar yaptılar Japonya'da. İnanın hocaların sunumlarından bile daha güzeldi. Allah hepsinden razı olsun. Kendilerine bir yaz boyunca ev sahipliği yaptık. Özellikle Emine Yeniterzi hocamızla çalıştılar ve çok başarılı bir yaz geçirdiler. Tekrar gelmek istediklerini belirttiler. Bu sempozyumda da çoğu sunum yapacak. Enstitümüzden Amerika ve Japonya'nın çeşitli üniversitesinde yaklaşık 30 bildiri sunuldu. İki Doğu'nun Köprüsü Tasavvuf Eğitim Programları projesi kapanış oturumu özel bir oturumla geçti. Carl Ernst, James Morris, William Chittick, Sashiko Murata, Juliana Hammer, Cemil Aydın eşi, çok kıymetli hocamız, Omid Safi, Bruce Lawrence, William Cook Amerika'dan katıldılar. Japonya'dan araştırmacılar Asya ve Afrika'da yapılan saha araştırmalarına yönelik çalışmalar sundular. İslam araştırmaları ve tasavvuf alanında içerik, yöntem ve metot üzerinde uzun uzun çalışmalar yapıldı. Efendim bu Japonya'da kurduğumuz enstitünün hemen 6 ay sonrasında yapılan bir çalışmadır. Dolayısıyla enstitülerin ne kadar faydalı olduğunu görüyoruz. Ben şu anda başta bizi bu yuvaya kabul eden hocamız Nevzat hocamıza ve YÖK'e özellikle teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Bizi anladılar, arkamızda durdular ve yaptığımız işin ciddiyetini kavradılar. İnşallah daha büyük çalışmalarda gene beraber oluruz dileğiyle herkese sonsuz teşekkürlerimi bildiriyorum. Gördüğünüz gibi önümüzde muazzam bir program var. Yurt dışında hiçbir ülkeye katılmayan hastalıkları dolayısıyla hocalarımız teşrif edip gelecekler. Burada galiba hocam Kenan Rıfai Hazretlerinin çok büyük rolü var. Çünkü kendileri şöyle buyurmuşlar. Nasıl yanardağın patlayan lavını elimizle durduramazsak İslam tasavvufunun da dünyaya yayılışını durduramayacağız ve dünya dini anlayışı İslam tasavvufundan öğrenecektir. Gördüğünüz bütün bu program hakikaten bunun bugün olmakta olduğunu gösteriyor. Bize hizmetçiliğin devamını Allah nasip etsin. Ölene kadar İslam uğruna çalışmayı nasip etsin. Teşekkürler ediyorum.
Çok teşekkür ederiz hocam. Şimdi de Üsküdar Üniversitesi Sayın Profesör Doktor Nevzat Tarhan hocamızı
Üsküdar University Professor Dr. Nevzat Tarhan. The podium is yours, sir.
Değerli hocalarım, değerli misafirler, sevgili yüksek lisans öğrencileri, hoş geldiniz. Önce kutlamak istiyorum. Çünkü yüksek lisansüstü programın için bir öğrenci sempozyumu yapılması herhalde ilk Türkiye'de. Başka bir örnek duymanın güzel. Yani öğrenci günleri yapılıyordu ama yani psikoloji öğrencilerin lisans seviyesinde, yüksek lisans öğrencileri genellikle böyle yüksek lisansını alır, kuş gibi uçar giderler. Fakat bu sefer burada bir farklı oldu. Tasavvuf araştırmaları yüksek üniversitede ciddi bir aralarında ciddi bir kaynaşma oldu, dostluk oldu ve aralarındaki o sıcaklığın, dostluğun yansıması olarak görüyorum. Yani demek ki yüksek lisans eğitimi tasavvuf araştırmalarında sadece akla hitap etmiyor, kalbe de hitap ediyor. Kalpleri birleştirmiş ki bir öğrenci çalıştayı, öğrenci sempozyumu yapıldı ve birlikte paylaşmaya devam ediyorlar. Hatta daha sonra da mezuniyet günleri yaparak çeşitli bu sempozyumların devam ettirmeleri, mezun olanların da katılmaya devam ettirmeleri, böyle bir dayanışma grubu halinde, bir felsefe grubu gibi bunları devam ettirmeleri bu güzelliğin daha çok insana yayılmasına sebep olur. Yani buradaki alınan bilgi eğer
so that we can hope others will benefit from the learning that we cultivate from here. If what we learn only serves us, then this doesn't really match the Sufi morals. It's not only about illuminating ourselves, but the culture of Irfan is about actually illuminating, enlightening others around us. As you know, our Prophet has said, the most beneficial to others is the most favorable of all the humans. So choosing this as a means of study, how many people can I touch, how many people can I support, how many people can I bring towards good than the bad. This is also something a university needs to do within a scientific discipline. Combining it with the tasawwuf would be the biggest contribution for the future of humanity. This is also important in the sense that the second law of thermodynamics talk about the law of entropy. It states that the universe tends to go towards disorder than order. If you don't heat somewhere, it will get cold. If you don't light somewhere, then it will be dark. So there's an entropy in physics, but also in psychology. It's a topic of discussion. Is entropy also a case for psychology? If we don't feed and nurture the good behaviors, will the bad behavior replace it? If we don't tend to our garden, it will be covered with the weeds. So when they're researching the neurobiology of humans, they want to find answers to these. They say the brain is like a valley. If you irrigate a certain place, the plants will grow, but the unirrigated places will be dry and deserted. So we have the good particle and the bad particle inside us. Whichever part we feed and nurture, it will be the ruling part. In California, you know that there are canyons. which have not received any rainfall for years and years. And a couple of years ago, there was a rainfall, and after the rainfall period, suddenly flowers started to bloom. Even a place that is seen as barren land, when there is rainfall, the flowers start to bloom. This is the same with human spirit. When there are the good seeds, they also grow with nurturing. So that's why there is a need for us to plant the good seeds, because we have this evil side and the angelic side. We are neither evil nor angel. We have both particles. We are in the middle. We're at the center, not on either side. And because we are in the middle, whichever side we get inclined to, this is how our lives will end. So the word tasawwuf, as our professors will know better than me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because among all these masters of tasawwufs, the word tasawwuf comes from the word saf, which is pure. So tasawwuf is about purifying the soul, saving the soul from the evil, from the bad. This is actually a purification process, and being in that effort is also for the good of human being, not only after life but also during this life. Tasawwuf serves us, and the peace that you feel in your heart and that vast ocean of feelings that you feel, nothing else can give that. Nothing else can replace it. If people can only sense it once, the peace inside that believing gives you, the internal beauty that tasawwuf enables one to feel, many people will give up doing the bad stuff. So the dynamic balance of the good and bad, because we need the opposite notion to understand the other one. For health, we need sickness. For light, we need darkness. So the bad was created to appreciate the good. We need the bad as well. It's not useless. Otherwise, we can't have the good to rule. The social entropy also has a part about Islamophobia, and the best method to fight Islamophobia is like fighting the dark. Fighting the dark is not through talking bad about the dark. You need to light up a candle. So when we tell the bright side of Quran and Islam, then it's gonna be a better fight against Islamophobia, better than the dark propaganda. Telling the bright side of Islam and living it is important. That's why doing these within a university discipline in scientific methodology, developing the human soul and bringing up theses and delivering lectures in an academic environment, and this is telling the methodology of Quran with the zeitgeist, with the spirit of this era, because in the past people believed in truth by their internal processes, but now people want scientific proof and scientific methodology. So we need to have the truth about death and after death and the truth of it. This is our responsibility to deliver. If we fail that responsibility, we will be guilty for it. So being a good person is not only a virtue, it's actually the price of our existence. If we are not a piece of stone, if we're not a bog, for being a human being, we need to pay a price. There's a cost for being a human being, and that is being a good person. This is a responsibility. This is a liability. It's not an arbitrary thing. It is a necessity, but we have to do it to everyone around us, to our spouses, to our families. You know, there are acts of random goodness. Random acts of goodness, and this is because the tasawwuf movement is adopted. In positive psychology, we have the gratefulness module. Somebody who has done something good for you in your past, you go and find that person and tell your gratefulness, gratitude. So the other person wonders why you've done it after such a long time, but this creates also good feelings inside that person. So to give positive living competency to a person by gifts for no reason, unconditional gift exchange. That's a task given to people, and there's the boss in a company, and there's the young guy who works there, and he's a very grumpy old man, but the guy likes him and he buys him a tie as a gift and gives it to him, and the boss says, why did you bring this to me? What do you want in return? What's in it for you? And then the guy gets surprised that I was going to a class and they told us to do a random act of kindness. That's why I brought you this gift, he said. And the guy gets startled because it was a very unexpected gesture and an answer. And later he thinks about this and goes back to his house, and he likes the idea. So he buys a gift to his son and he takes it to his son. And then the boy starts crying, and then he brings out a rope out of his pocket. He says, I was gonna hang myself up. I thought nobody liked me. There was no meaning in life, so I was gonna commit suicide. Because the father was apathetic and he never expressed his love for his son. And the first time he expresses his love, it creates an important milestone, a turning point in his life, and changes everything. So when we have unexpected acts of kindness, then it changes things. Cemil Meriç has a nice saying. He says, if you want anything in exchange of the favor you do, that means you are doing usury. You are exercising usury. The real kindness is unconditional and you don't expect anything.
Fazla uzattım herhalde. Ben başarılar diliyorum bu lisansüstü çalışma.
Now, without taking further ado, I would like to express my great symposium, and I want you to be more successful in the future as well. Thank you so much, dear rector of our university.
Koçak Tufan, a member of the Executive Committee of the Higher Education Council, supported our efforts and took the time to attend this graduate student symposium despite her busy schedule. Biz lisansüstü öğrenciler tarafından düzenlenmiş olan bu sempozyuma bugünkü yoğun programına rağmen gelerek çalışmalarımızı destekledikleri için bütün öğrenci arkadaşlarım ve sempozyum düzenleme kurulumuz adına Yükseköğretim Kurumu Yürütme Kurulu üyelerinden Sayın Doçent Doktor Zeliha Koçak Tufan hocamıza çok teşekkür ederiz. Şimdi hocamızı kürsüye davet ediyorum lütfen. Buyurunuz hocam.
Buradan ekranı görebiliyor musunuz? Thank you so much for your presentation. Esteemed guests, esteemed students, I'm very happy to be with you, first of all. And I would like to also thank to Miss Can Güzel for inviting me and also for making this event possible. Talking in a program about tasawwuf research, what kind of an opening speech can I make? I thought, and there's a difference between being a fish in the ocean and an oceanologist. So I will not go into that field. I might make mistakes. So I will tell you about what I know rather than what you know. I would like to talk to you about the undergraduate studies. I am a medical doctor and I work in infectious diseases, and I believe that the microcosmos represents the macrocosmos, and there are levels and levels, maybe 900 levels in the cosmos. When we talk about a culture example,
bir iğne özeğiyle, yani küçük bir iğne uçlu tel özeğiyle bakteriyi alıp
when you take a bacteria and you bring it to a exemplary dish, then you have population, and then it goes straight, and then it goes up, and then it stays in a plateau. And after that level, whatever you do, it will never rise up, and it will go down, and the colony dies. So there is a life cycle among bacteria, and they have their very specific characteristics. There are many bacteria that I actually respect, Staphylococcus. They have their very specific, very special lifestyles, and some of them are very, very complicated. So in a microcosmos, that even the single cell organisms can vary so much, we can see that the human organism has many, many different dimensions. So the scientific research cannot be limited with our ability of seeing and hearing. That was a mistake of thousands of years, denying our history and past. And it is very important that now there are studies about this topic, but I support them nonetheless. I'm not going to go any further in fields of tasawwuf. About the slides, my slides are in English, but I prepared this for an international symposium. Normally they tell it in Turkish over Turkish slides, but I've done the opposite. Now I think there are more people who speak Turkish, so there are very little number of people who can benefit from English slides. Since it's an opening speech, I will shortly mention a couple of statistics and some new developments, and then I will conclude. The potential of higher education in Turkey, when we talk about the students, we're talking about more than 7 million students. Turkey is the second biggest country in Europe about higher education after Greece, the first. We have around 200 higher education institutions, and our pool of students and members of faculty are very high. 68 of them are foundation institutions, 112 of them are government schools, and 5 of them are vocational higher education institutions. And as per years, the numbers keep increasing, but when we look, the demand justifies it. The number of students entering the central university election exams keep increasing. For undergraduate programs, there's a similar increase. When we look at the numbers of international students, there's an accelerated trend. One of the reasons being the national political decisions And secondly, the Higher Educational Board as an institution supports this. Also, our universities, international studies and visibility keep increasing. Also, the accepting of foreign students are now left to the discretion of individual universities rather than a central exam. When we look at the undergraduate education, since we are in an undergraduate student symposium today, mostly the undergraduate students show us that it is aiming to have more graduate students. So it is among our priorities to increase the undergrad students. And there is also an important increase in graduate studies. Increasingly, we see an increasing number of topics of study. What are the major countries sending us students? Azerbaijan was the highest last year because Turkish was an important issue. There are many programs teaching in English in Turkey, and we speak Turkish, so Azerbaijan was the first. But this year, these are the recent numbers, the Syrian students are also leading. As you know, we are hosting a lot of Syrian people, and both on undergrad and grad levels, and also for academicians, we're carrying out certain activities. So there is a steady increase in the Syrian students. Also, you can see the numbers from many different countries. Students come to Turkey. As per Syrians, there's one thing I want to mention. Our students coming from lands of war and academicians, we have some problems with the concordance because their diplomas are not available. So we wanted to solve that problem. We did some studies about improving the situation, and now our standards are set, and you can ask for detailed information from resources. But if students coming from lands of war and academicians coming from lands of war, the standards are also applauded by Europe, the standards that we use for having academicians transfer to Turkey. We have a more structured standard, our processes are more clear, so that means we will have a more attractive environment for academicians.
Those who stayed in our country were generally the people without a diploma, but we are trying our best to make sure that all of them stay. And they study at both private universities and state public universities. Istanbul University has the highest number of students, and it is followed by Anadolu University, Gaziantep, Sakarya, and some others. So the universities in the peripheries of the country are now welcoming students and educating them, and this culture is being established. I have been to Iraq, Baghdad, and many countries in Africa, and Turkey has become one of those countries that are followed by the others, and somehow in some cities you hear the names of not previously that much known universities, and we are very pleased to see that many steps have been taken forward. And as different universities, we have signed MOUs So we are in contact with them institutionally and at governmental level. You see Gambia here. Gambia is a very small country in Western Africa. It is a Muslim and a small country, and it is surrounded by non-Muslim neighboring countries, but you wouldn't believe how much they love us. So with a population of 2.5 million, they have a tremendous love for Turkey, and they also said, the former president of the country said, we can also host Syrian refugees, and we have a very dynamic ambassador in office there currently, but of course our students contributed tremendously to the enlarging scope of those studies. We have more than 300 rectors who participated to a meeting, and we are hoping to get the outputs of that as soon as possible. But the fact that we have achieved the meeting for bringing them together has already brought a lot of fruitful results. And in many graduate programs and in basic fundamental fields, the number of people with a PhD degree is targeted to be increased in line with works of vision. And also, there are studies to ensure that universities are not similar to one another and have their differences. And so we have certain activities like clustering. Why do we do that? Because many academic fellows and many universities are somehow similar, but looking into the number of the PhD graduates, we see we fall behind. So those fellows at universities who work in specific fields, who study on certain specific themes, is fewer, and we are congratulating you, the Üsküdar University, for concentrating on a thematic subject. And the other day we were wondering if we could look into a subject which had Sufism and Islamic studies in their curriculums, and I wanted to go through the undergraduate and graduate programs at Atatürk University, Ankara University, Ali Baghdadi and Rumi Research Center, and Karadeniz Technical University, at Marmara University, Sufism PhD and master's degree, and in Sakarya University I see graduate programs, but the only program of Sufism with full concentration seems to be available at Üsküdar University, and I perceive that this is a thing that is attributed to Üsküdar University, and the number of the students has already exceeded 500 as far as I could see. I hope you will have higher number of students, because as the human beings we do not nurture ourselves only through one source, so I hope that you will further nurture yourselves and look into some other fields. We have talked about women throughout this week, and I know that the women have contributed a lot to this institute as well. Women are all different.
Çünkü kadınlarımızı şu an öyle bir çalışmaya zorluyoruz ki evi tercih
addressed to them. Those who prefer to remain at home maybe are one group. Of course, it won't be appropriate for me to say before the presence of professor, but anyways, if a person is preferring to stay at home and spend time and spare time for their children, then it is to be respected. But here we see something like mobbing in there, because a pressure of society is applied on women, and they say that if you believe in yourself, you can do it, and if they can't do it, then they start thinking that I can't then. And this is another type of mobbing, I believe. So every woman has her own way of dealing with life. And this person here, this image at the bottom, probably represents the person to be sent when we need academic research. And this part is probably about the part that will not judge you and listen to you at home when you are at home. And then this lady is about partying, I guess. So women are beings that nurture themselves both horizontally and vertically, and they will be dealing with things one way or another. And the reason for us in losing the number of female students in graduate programs is related with the fact of imposing certain things on women. It is another type of mobbing, as I said before. So for us to be able to see higher number of female students at such graduate programs, we need to be undersigning or realizing some other new projects. So this is our inauguration ceremony, and we have a high potential. You may say we can see women, and I say let's take a closer look, and we still can't see them. And that's why we attach great importance to the studies carried by...
Sempozyumunda başarılı geçmesini ümit ediyorum. Ben yoğun programı nedeniyle öğleden sonra burada olamayacağım ama başlangıcına katılmaktan dolayı çok mutluyum.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz Zeliha hocamıza.
I'd like to thank Professor Zeliha. And now I would like to invite Professor Nefes.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz tekrar efendim. Now we will continue our program with welcoming remarks. Efendim şimdi de affedersiniz opening speeches diyecektim. Kusura bakmayın lütfen. Sayın Profesör Doktor Kenan Gürsoy hocamızı Tasavvuf ve Bir Medeniyet Tasavvuru başlıklı konuşma.
Now we would like to invite Professor Kenan Gürsoy to the stage to deliver his presentation with the title of Sufism and the Conception of Civilization. The floor is yours. Estimable Rector, distinguished administrators of this valuable institute, the chair of a delegation of initiative, my dear friend, Ms. Jamal Nur Sargud, distinguished academics, the students of master's degree program, I would like to welcome you all. We're very pleased about the fact that an institute has been established, but we are invited by such an institute that has been carrying out such activities. I know its capacity and its origin, and I appreciate it very much. From time to time we unite, but from some other time to some other times we may fall far from one another, but I do appreciate the action of a dear friend to my heart for his efforts. When we say Sufism, it is a field of attraction, but also a field that is profound to comprehend and very attractive, but at the same time very simple. But on the other hand, difficult, a lifestyle that is difficult to adopt. And on one hand, it is actually a field that the religious experience is rising out of. And on the other hand, all the other disciplines. are of subject of study by Sufism. On one side of it, it is simple because it is a religious experience in its essence, but to understand it and objectively phenomenize it, we at the same time see that it goes deeper into each and every field. And of course comes the subject of Professor Tarhan first, which is psychology and psychology hygiene. And all the other fields, starting from philosophy to anthropology, ethnology, history, sociology, we see them all within the scope of Sufism. And if we are not fully aware of that, then the state of living through Sufism can't be seen. And if we can't see that, it is not possible for us to fully comprehend it. And as Professor Mahmud Erol is here, he is one of the youngest, but also one of the most seasoned of the field. As they know, intellectually, philosophically, scientifically expressed discourses are needed to fully perceive Sufism, and on the other hand, it means also alienation from it, because the subject matter is the state and also the way of execution. Sufism is everything in heart, but nothing on tongue. One of prominent figures of the field said. So if we don't have the heart in what you do, you cannot express it through your tongue if you are to carry out scientific studies in that field. And on the other hand, the same person said, the tekkas were closed down. Maybe it was needed, and it was a need of the period, and one day may come for them to be opened back again, but in forms of academies, he or she said. And how come can we combine the two? We see one of the first examples of the field. What does academy mean? So as a person who is studying in the field of philosophy, and as someone who comes from that tradition, but who maybe nurtured himself on a far corner of the garden, I myself also have been very much interested in this subject. What does academy mean, and what does establishing an academy mean? So in philosophy, sociology, ethnography, in history, there are certain evaluations, but it is not only to do with evaluating them and seeing it through a single-sided perspective. And academy means learning how to be humans, and being in academy is to do with the ability of expressing humanity and also delivering the fact of being human beings to it. And I see that a very great phenomenon is in the foreground. We always articulate the same thing, the human beings, and this place says that we want to train, we want to educate or nurture human beings. So it is not only to do with the highways or industrial development or politics or socially understanding human beings, yet going beyond understanding, it is about looking for the ways of being human beings, and as much as possible to pave that way, and also try all the gates alongside that path and walk towards new directions or destinations going through those gates. So, my dear professor, I would like to welcome you all to your university, to the institute. And hopefully we, in terms of scientific outcomes and also for the good of humanity, we will have many fruitful results reaped out of that conference. And how come is it possible? As someone coming from the tradition of philosophy, or as someone who wants to see himself there, I'm not speaking in those shoes, but I am speaking as a person of philosophy. What does it mean to talk about Sufism through philosophy? I also want to talk about that and towards where philosophy can drag us. And why do we need to pay the due attention in order not to lead to marginalization or separation of paths? We are at a symposium of the graduate students, which is also an international one. Years ago, about 44 years ago, I carried out my first MA study at Paris Sorbonne the Fourth in the Department of Philosophy with a specific concentration on Sufism. So I first had to translate a text into French, which was written during Middle Ages, and then I was to write certain comments on that or interpretation of mine. And I knew what I knew from my own traditions and continued to live in that. But once it was about reflecting the things into language of philosophy, it was challenging because we back in time had very few studies because you think that you are in an area that you have the knowledge about, but it was difficult, of course, to translate it into the language of philosophy. And it is very difficult, as Professor Mahmud knows. On one hand, you're struggling with the terms of philosophy, and on the other hand, you have to look into the abstract aspects of philosophy. And the lives of human beings and the state of living are the must-haves for us to understand it or to fully comprehend it. And on the other hand, you're trying to conceptualize things and put them into a certain framework, and this is a very challenging task, actually. And in one of our recent studies, I had to translate one text from French into Italian, because that culture of irfan and the concepts about living and heart are difficult to be translated. And finally, I had to keep three of them as they are. One is irfan, the word is irfan, and the other one is adab, and the third one is related with irfan culture and adab, which is ashk, love. And once translated in a Western language, there could arise certain weaknesses, and the limits may not allow us to fully comprehend it. That's why we decided we should keep them as they are, and maybe it has been a contribution to transfer those words into a Western language. If you don't know about irfan and adab, then you cannot fully understand and be aware of a figure who is in that field. And this goes the same for French or Italian or English. And I think that the language of philosophy should be addressing these all. And in my own Western philosophy studies, I studied about phenomenology, and my Jamal Nur sister is now looking at me. Phenomenology is maybe related with aesthetics, epistemology. She may say those, but as far as I can see now, she has also grown accustomed to those. I believe Professor Tarhan also had some effect in that. Phenomenology first starts with classification or description of the field that it takes into account. What's there? Yes, the history of Sufism, alongside it being revealed throughout history. On the other hand, some anthropologic, etymological aspects are needed, but also there is an aspect of it that is brimming out of all. So the essence of it, it has an essence, and that very essence, it cannot be isolated from those fields, and that's why we need academic research. But this essence that we cannot isolate is to be specifically subjected to evaluation. Otherwise, those phenomena or those concepts, if they are understood as they are presented, you cannot understand what is expressed in the background. If the subject matter is Sufism, then we definitely must have the heart and the morality coming with that heart, and also the need to understand the human being within the both. So in all those forms and phenomena and all those events or incidents, what renders one issue Sufi related with Sufism, it is the state that this person is in, and the truth of that state, that spiritual state, and what it is related to, and what it corresponds to. And whenever I listen to him, I feel inspired. The distinguished director said that we should be paying the rent. And maybe we should pay a rent for being good human beings. And Sufism is not getting enough of a rent as such. Because you may think about different types of living, and in social morality we can talk about such a rent being paid. But let me continue with what you provided us as an example. So we need an interaction there, or maybe a sort of shopping that may go all the way to purchasing. But of course, such purchasing is nothing to do with the presented shopping style of the capitalist culture. But this shopping or interaction is one among the human beings, and on the other hand, it is an interaction in between the human beings and also the creator. You may ask me why I am talking about purchasing, because the Sufi experience is giving up on oneself as an individual and creating other use and uniting, and it's an expression, it's an experience of directing oneself towards that. That's why you should give from yourself so that you can take from the others. And of course, it is not dying, but it is such an interaction that the self that you are is perceived, comprehended with a heart, and there is a direction towards him or her. So such a thing, such a verbal experience may be expressed in those words, and that interdisciplinary and cultural, biological, psychological, psychiatrical fields. So you can not understand it only through the external phenomenon. And maybe a second type of arrogance on my side, but existential aspect of things need to be included. So we understand the challenge. On one hand, you have the phenomena, the states that is being experienced and lived, but on the other hand, your own personal experience and the course of life for you, and that course that leads you to unifying, and only then you can get the full awareness of that existential state. Of course, this is related with psychology in many aspects, but as someone coming from the field of philosophy, I am expressing the aspects of philosophy, but looking into the existential part of things, the phenomenological method is what I try to involve in things, where it expresses itself the most or to the highest extent. That place where tasawwuf is placed, but is brimming out of it, it is an identification by a Western philosopher. And he came up with it in 1920s, but studied in the field of mystical Sufi studies. So mysticism for the Western, he is not coining it as Sufism, because in the Western world they did not have so much of Sufism. Mysticism is related with the experience of knowledge, is a way or is a striving of finding out how to know, the discoveries, the feelings, and also the knowledge coming from heart and a mystical experience. But in the East, us included, of course, harbors that and takes it within, also experiences it as morality. I don't know if Professor Tahran, if you are in terms with me, but Sufism within all of those interdisciplinary areas expresses itself mostly in moral behaviors. So the first one will course through the phenomena of human beings, humanity, and make one realize that longing for humanity. And if we try to find out from where we can take it out, then we need to delve into the field of ethics, which also harbors them all. So comes two things out at this point. One is the ability of thinking, an internal part of human beings that cannot be harbored within only itself, which means it's his heart, his conscience, but on the other hand, a direction towards moral principles. And it is also the ability to walk towards that direction as a subject of morals. So that's why I am coming back to the theme of my presentation. in this Sufi field, it is not the journey of an individual on his own. It is not about the steps that this person takes towards this direction, or shaking off his own weaknesses and walks towards the sense of things, but Sufism at the same time creates us, and but it is creating that through its own internal in-look. And this is an us that creates the civilization. And if you want to watch these people from these perspectives, those people who are in Sufism from this perspective, then you will see they have made their assessments within themselves and not restrict themselves only to themselves, but step out into the world, come up with a culture, and as they have a moral ground laid for it, a civilization rises out of it. And in terms of construction of civilization, in what status they are is what we are to see in our studies of Sufism. But in terms of differentiations of civilizations, will it be a milestone and the grounds for full assessment? Yes, because our own culture, our own civilization, may it be named or not, is a civilization which has risen out of such irfan, such an irfan, and the destination of beings towards themselves and removing the war within oneself can't be enough for us to understand it fully. You cannot understand it only with the morals, with the mosques, with the tekkas, with the paths, with the routes created, with the hammams built or constructed. So hidden in those forms, the spirit cannot be fully realized. And that is why it is not only about knitting a carpet or cooking a meal, but in true sense of endless and constant establishing of a civilization that opens itself to Allah and paves the path for all. So such a civilization can only be read with essential understanding of Sufism, and that's why I wanted to articulate that. But it is not only to do with that only. Such a civilization has the capacity of a universal embracing, and the necessity of such universal embracing is again related with the characters of Sufism, because Sufism is the religion of existence, of unity, a religion of unifying of existence. It is the place where that spirit is lived within an individual. So in terms of tolerance, it is a sort of interaction with all the civilizations. It's an interaction with all the civilizations for the name of one, and also in the journey towards morals and civilization being in the path for all. And it is not only my heart. Our heart are not only my heart. It is not reduced down to my only heart. It is from you to us and from us to them, but in particular walking towards him and knowing, being fully aware, it is the only and the mighty of the whole universe. Thank you.
Kenan Gürsoy hocamıza teşekkür ederiz. Hocam beklediğiniz için teşekkür ederiz. Üniversitemizi ilk defa teşrif ettikleri için kendilerinin şiitlerini takdim etmek üzere Sayın Cemal Nur Sargut hocamızı davet ediyoruz.
Thank you so much for listening, and we would like to invite Ms. Cemal Nur Sargut to deliver the plaque of commemoration.
Kırmızı.
Efendim, öncelikle çok...
First of all, I would like to thank to my dear friend, dear brother, my comrade that we walked the same path with, Mr. Kenan Gürsoy. I would like to express my gratitude and respect. One topic that he has mentioned, tasawwuf is a way of life, it's a lifestyle, and what we learn here, will it be a way of life? I would like to give a short answer to that with a little anecdote from our Elif Hoca. One of the departments that have no complaints is the Department of Tasawwuf. And in one meeting, they've asked to our director of the institute, Elif, how can you run a department with no complaints whatsoever? And she said, on this path, we first learn to not see the mistakes, so there's nothing to complain about. So actually, tasawwuf is living the religion, the morals, the ethics, whichever way you might choose to say. We're not embarrassed of saying it. We can't be at your level, of course, but there's one thing. Your beloved grandfather had something. He said, we are not either one of those or the other, but we are both those and the other. So how happy we would be if we are able to achieve this.
Before inviting our second speaker, Dr. Atif Khalil, I would like to give a brief introduction. From Canada, Associate Professor Atif Khalil is an Islamic Studies scholar from the Religious Studies Department of Lethbridge University. Dr. Khalil was also a lecturer in the Kenan Islamic Studies program at Peking University. The bonds between our institute and he have continued since that time. We would once again like to say welcome and thank him for taking the time to share this experience with us. Sempozyumumuz için Kanada'dan gelen doçent doktor Atif Khalil hocamız, Lethbridge Üniversitesi Dini Çalışmalar Bölümünde İslam Araştırmaları hocasıdır. Hocamız aynı zamanda Pekin Üniversitesi'ndeki Kenan Rifai İslam Araştırmaları programında bir dönem dersler vermiştir. Enstitümüzün hocamızla gönül bağı o zamandan beri devam etmektedir. Kendilerini bir kere daha hoş geldiniz diyerek vakit ayırıp geldikleri için teşekkür ederiz. I'd now like to invite Dr. Atif Khalil to the stage, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Cemal Nur Hoca and the organizers for inviting me to so momentous an occasion as the one that we've gathered here for, all the way from Lethbridge, Alberta, the heartland of Canada, the Canadian prairies. It's something of a gift from God also to have been invited here, because it was minus 20 degrees in Canada before I came. It gets so cold that the cars need heaters. I'm not joking. Now, the subject of the talk that I'll be giving is actually not near-death experiences from the vantage point of Akbarian metaphysics. That I'll be speaking about tomorrow. That subject required more time than I was allocated, and because I wanted to do it justice, I will be speaking about it tomorrow for about 30 to 35 minutes. Today I'll be very short. I'll be speaking about Sufism, moral psychology, and the station of repentance. And my words will be very brief, since brevity is the soul of wit. Now, Sufism, or the science of Sufism, as many of you already know, was traditionally divided into two sub-disciplines, or sub-sciences. There was, first of all, what was known as ilm al-mukashafa, or the science of unveiling. And there was, secondly, what was known as ilm al-muamala, the science of praxis. Now, as far as the first of these subdivisions of Sufism was concerned, ilm al-mukashafa, this is sometimes idiomatically translated into English as mystical doctrine, mystical philosophy, Sufi metaphysics, or a somewhat outdated term was theosophy. And the focus of this science was on formulating a conception about the nature of reality based on a direct and unmediated experience with the ground of being, or what Meister Eckhart, the Christian mystic, referred to as the ground of being. It wasn't rooted in a rational, speculative, or scientific and empirical study of the universe, but on a direct, unmediated encounter, a mystical experience, what the Sufis described as dhawq and mukashafa. But this science, this sub-discipline of Sufism, of ilm al-mukashafa, was itself overshadowed, at least as far as the literary corpus of Sufism is concerned, by what many of the Sufis consider to be a much more important science or sub-discipline of Sufism, namely ilm al-muamala, ilm al-muamala, or the science of praxis, the science of practical conduct. The importance of this second science, al-ilm al-muamala, lay in the practical nature of this science. It wasn't simply concerned with theoretically contemplating the universe. It had a very practical application. The primary purpose of this science was pragmatic. The focus of this science was how to cultivate the inner life, how to transform and purify the soul, how to raise the level of one's consciousness, and perhaps most importantly, how to develop character. It was the science of character formation, how to develop the virtues. We could refer to this science as Islamic contemplative ethics, Islamic contemplative psychology, Islamic virtue ethics, or as simply Islamic moral psychology. Now, the main focus of the second science was, as I noted, the cultivation of character and of purifying the soul. The science dealt with the methods of moral, ethical, and character transformation. And its importance was itself rooted in the famous hadith of the Prophet, when the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, I was not sent except to perfect character. That's how important akhlaq was. The Prophet said, I was not sent except to perfect character. And in another hadith, the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, inna min ahabbikum ilayya ahsanukum akhlaqan, that those of you that are most beloved to me are those who have the best character. This intricate relationship between Sufism and character formation and akhlaq was underscored in the Meccan revelations in Ibn Arabi's chapter on tasawwuf. He has a chapter called the Maqam al-Tasawwuf, the station of tasawwuf. And he says, tasawwuf is akhlaq. This is Ibn Arabi, the great metaphysician of Islam. And in this chapter on the station of tasawwuf, he says, the station of tasawwuf is the station of akhlaq, of character. And this is why in Sufism you had the saying, man zadaka fil khuluq, zadaka fil tasawwuf, that he who surpasses you in character has surpassed you in tasawwuf. That's how intricately interrelated character formation was with Sufism. Now, the more philosophical basis, there's a scriptural basis for this close relationship between khuluq and tasawwuf, but the more philosophical basis for this lay in the importance that was attached to the character of the virtues. From the perspective of the Sufi tradition, the character or the virtues that one internalized in this process of the transformation of character, this tabdil al-khuluq, were themselves rooted in the divine names. In other words, the process of the transformation of character was a process of taking on the names of God, whence the saying of the Prophet, "Takhalluq bi akhlaq Allah," take on the character traits of God. And so the science of character formation implied becoming divine-like. So God is Rahman, you internalize the quality of Rahmah. God is Sabur, you internalize the quality of patience. God is Shakur, you internalize the quality of gratitude. God is Ghafur, you internalize the quality of forgiveness. God is Halim, you internalize the quality of gentle kindness. God is Adil, you internalize the quality of justice, and so forth, so on and so forth. And the implication was that because of the principle that like attracts like, the more you internalize the virtues which have their origin in the divine names, the more divine-like you become. And because like attracts like, the soul is drawn to what it is like, and if it's divine-like, it's drawn to God. We see this in our own lives. Our friends reflect who we are. And if we change as a person, our friends change. Our social interactions are determined by the state of the soul itself. The people we gravitate to tend to be people like ourselves, and the people that we're repelled by tend to be people that are not like ourselves. And this also applies metaphysically or ontologically. When the soul becomes divine-like, it irresistibly is drawn into the presence of God. Since God is beautiful and He loves beauty, Allahu Jamil yuhibbu jamal, as you beautify the soul through beautiful character traits, you are drawn to God, or you might say God is drawn to you. It's one and the same thing. Now, this second science of al-ilm al-mu'amala was, in the history of Western scholarship, overshadowed by the focus that was given to ilm al-mukashafa. If you consider the first work of Sufism that was published in a language of European scholarship, it was the German Protestant theologian's Sufism, or the pantheistic philosophy of the Persians. He was a German theologian, and he wrote this book in Latin, and it set the course for Sufi studies in the West. And this is why there was always this belief, mistaken, until very recently, that Sufism always was focused on metaphysics. You do not have any major important work, to my knowledge, on Sufi ethics, even though within the Sufi tradition itself, ethics was always the primary focus. Metaphysics or mukashafa was simply the fruit of ethics. You can't have this direct experience of God unless you become divine-like and ascend into the presence of God. Now, as far as the schematization of the virtues were concerned, or the akhlaq that the Sufis focused on cultivating, they usually were subsumed within Sufi manuals in the sections devoted to what were known as the ahwal, or the maqamat, or the manazil. These were stations on the journey to God, or the rungs of a ladder that the aspirant climbed in his or her journey into the divine presence. And all of these stations almost invariably began with the station of repentance. It was the first station of the path. The Sufis might have differed on the importance of virtues, which ones were to be hierarchized before others, which ones preceded others, but there was a general agreement that the first station of the path was the station of Tawbah. Now in English, when we think of Tawbah, we usually think of the word repentance, but the word is a little misleading, because in English, the word repentance comes from the Latin word penitare, which means to grieve or to regret, whereas Tawbah comes from an Arabic root, taba yatubu, which means to turn. God is tawab, He turns towards you. He never regrets what He's done, but He turns towards you and you turn towards God. So there's almost a heliotropic dialectical relationship between God and the human being, where God turns towards you, you turn towards God, God turns towards you, and so on and so forth. As the Quran says, ثُمَّ تَابَ عَلَيْكُمْ لِيَتُوبُوا. He turned towards them that they would return towards Him. Now, the Prophet ﷺ himself emphasized the importance of the function of Tawbah in his own prophecy when he said, Ana Nabiy Tawbah, I am the Prophet of Tawbah. And he emphasized the importance of Tawbah in the spiritual life when he said, At-Taibu Habib Allah, that the Ta'ib, the one who does Tawbah, is the beloved of God. Or when he said in another hadith, Kullu bani Adam khatta'un wa khairul khatta'in at-tawwabun, that all of the children of the primordial Adam are sinners, and the best of the sinners are those who turn frequently to God. Now in Sufi ethics, Tawbah was seen to be an all-consuming state, which marked entry into the spiritual life. Tawbah was seen as a kind of interior conversion that brought one from the fringes of one's faith to its center. This idea was perhaps best reflected in the beautiful saying of the early Sufi Ibrahim al-Daqaq when he said, Tawbah is that you be unto God a face without a back, just as you were previously unto God a back without a face. It is that you be unto God a face without a back, just as you were previously unto God a back without a face. In other words, your ghafla of your previous life is replaced by remaining in a continuous state of being present before God in all circumstances, fi kull hal. All the other virtues would follow in the wake of Tawbah. And so the Sufis agreed that Tawbah was the first station of the path. Now, how might this state of Tawbah be relevant to us in the study of Sufism, in the academic study of Sufism? At risk of sermonizing and against the conventions of the secular study of religion, which emphasizes disengagement and detachment, and which separates being from knowing, I would encourage all of us, especially the students, the graduate students, beginning with myself, so that since we are all lovers of tasawwuf, that we should try to maintain something of the state of Tawbah in our own scholarship, in our own scholarly endeavors. That we should turn our backs on what others might think of our scholarship. We should turn our backs to the trappings of the desire for fame and recognition, which often accompanies academic learning, and that we single-mindedly focus on our attention on the truth, and beyond that, on ultimate reality itself. I would encourage us to engage in our scholarship even as a kind of meditative prayer, in a state of complete sincerity, because Tawbah is marked by sincerity, and that we pursue our scholarship and our intellectual work for the benefit of our own souls and the benefit of the souls of others, but with a certain measure of detachment and self-effacement in our work. From personal experience, I've found that when scholarship is pursued for higher ends, that it is then that it is most fruitful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Khalil. To offer you a token of our gratitude, I would like to invite our Institute Director, Professor Dr. Elif Erhan, to present you with this gift. Çok teşekkürler. Şimdi de Üsküdar Üniversitesi Rektör Danışmanlarından Sayın Profesör Doktor Mahmud Erol Kılıç hocamızı Osmanlı dönemi tasavvuf düşüncesi ve çalışmanın önemi başlıklı konuşmalarını yapmak üzere.
Rahman ve Rahim olan Allah'ın adıyla.
The name of God, mercy.
Muhterem öğrenci arkadaşlar, yurt dışından gelenler, hepiniz hoş geldiniz. Ben sonuncu konuşmacı olduğum için sürede zannediyorum bayağı bitti, geçti.
I'm short of time, so that's why I will try to be as brief as possible. So with the hope of not delaying the program, so I will try to talk a bit intense. Please forgive me. My title, as you can see, is actually a bit specific in a technical field. However, before that, I'd like to share a few things with you. First of all, tasawwuf as a model is indeed aiming at understanding religion, and Islamic history within our borders, this is something we prefer. This is a model that we prefer to grasp and understand. And that's why tasawwuf may sometimes be thought as something different from religion, but it's not actually the case. It is stuck to the religion. And it is trying, it's one of the models that is aiming at attempting to explain what real Islam is. And now we actually call Kenan Hoca's universe of phenomenology the universe of manifestation. So whatever is manifest is actually coming from the batin to zahir, from the unseen to the seen. So we have actually first a vertical history, that's what we're interested in, and then a horizontal history. So tasawwuf has got a vertical history. The vertical history is composed of the doctrines and the philosophy and the thoughts. And those who actually study on those doctrines, as we've already had so many scholars and today, and we have horizontal history. So this is actually more related with institutional stage. When we look at the vertical history, we can see all the concepts that have been put forward is actually the archaeology of Islamic religion. So this is directly taken from Islam, and this is a model that actually makes us realize the meaning. So this model does not deny the previous religions. This model actually, as Franks would say, as Europeans would say, update the model, take it further. As you know, in computer technology, we have this patching model. Updating the last version, we need some patches. So the perfect, the most completed version, as the ayats in the Quran says, coming from the history, the ones that are really true on the right path, which has no disc distortion. You know, the disc distortion is not only in medicine, we also have in history, in thoughts, there are distortions of discs. And that's why the stature, actually the statue gets distorted and destroyed, and people actually try to make it straight. So that's how we do in tasawwuf too. So those deficiencies, distortions, going astrays, abnormalities should actually be restored and be treated through tasawwuf in Islam. So, for example, the Christian studies, biblical studies, should also actually be carrying out their studies based on the knowledge coming from the Quran. So tasawwuf, when the time comes, it may be related to philosophy, psychology, and it may contribute to these fields. So tasawwuf can be such a model that contributes to the philosophy and psychology. The most problematic issue on philosophy is that what is philosophy and what kind of a thing is philosophy? As Plato says, oh man, you were a god, but you have forgotten. So in order to remind the man of the divinity of a human being is mostly actually and most successfully practiced in the field of tasawwuf. So when, in essence, when looked through this perspective, this is what tasawwuf targets. So whatever we actually aim at doing is actually being practiced in tasawwuf. So that's why both in making philosophy more meaningful, because there were meaning distortions in philosophy, so gaining the real meaning of philosophy, which was actually in the ancient times, it was like that. And when there was this meaning distortion in ethics, tasawwuf plays a very important role. ahlak means to be able to be in the pain of a sort. So to be carrying out the character of God's character, when we think about this along with what Plato says, so to be in the character, in the created character of how Allah created us is actually replied, that question is actually replied in Tasawwuf. So Tasawwuf has got great contributions to clarifying such issues. So our students who follow our courses would know that there are some separatist philosophy styles are actually all artificial. Vahdet-i vücut, oneness of being,
Bunda bir bilme melekesinin olduğu,
there is actually
bizim kalp dediğimiz
a human being. So what we call a heart is what the philosophers call purified intellect. Actually, this is heart. So as Nevzat Hoca very rightfully experienced, as myself, actually the
kalp atıyor ona.
The clock to the brain is also sent by the heart. So it's also the heart that actually sends you both the right and the wrong messages. So one of the problematic issues after Renaissance is it the brain or the mind? Is it the intellect? We call this akıl in Turkish. So the real meaning of intellect has been lost. So those theologists actually think that the intellect is actually brain. So now the people coming from the field of divinity should consult to Nevzat Hoca. Whereas in the Quran, it says they have their heart and that's the intellect of the heart. So they actually intellectualize with their heart. So it's the heart that actually intellectualizes things. So brain is actually something different. So this is something related with Tasawwuf's vertical history, which may contribute to some multi-dimensional studies, multidisciplinary studies. So the great scholars have already studied on great observations, but when we actually look at the horizontal history, when it comes to the way of practicing of tasawwuf in our earth, so we have actually observed some tasawwuf institutions, and we call them, as Plato calls them, academia. So we have actually institutionalized these teachings, and the scholars have given their own kind of training in these institutions. And Pisakor's way of education, let's say in the established school, the function, the methods, the methodology, how he actually interacted with his students could very well be observed, and then you can yourself analyze whether it's a philosophical function or it's a function of a lodge. So I would actually recommend you to look at things not with names but with functions. So similarly, the echoes in Baghdad, in Khorasan, so since I'm very short of time, I won't be able to go into the details, but let me have a very quick overview of things. In such écoles, the great scholars actually contributed a lot. As you very well know, one of them coming from Delhi died in Konya. Cenab Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi is a great example. So one comes from the west, one comes from the east, Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi. So both did settle in this geography. and they are the founding fathers of the Ottoman state, both politically, both in terms of law. The great scholars said we have been breastfed by two mothers, one Celaleddin and the other is Muhyiddin. So in the light of this, we shouldn't be actually taken off our path. We should actually be straight in our way of path, like influences of Wahhabis and Arabic écoles actually have not been able to succeed, thank God, because of the Ottoman state's character, saying that our path is the path of Muhyiddin Celaleddin, and Ottoman state was persistent in it. And we can see this in the works of these founding fathers. Sadrettin Konevi, one of the students of Rumi, and the other students, Kashani and so forth, have actually prevailed through the Central Asia. So when such thoughts prevailed in the Central Asia, the schools of commentary were established, including the Shia Iranian scholars and the influence of Ibn Arabi. So we have the Ibn Arabi commentators. So when we look at our side, the Ottoman state, if it's proper to say, the first rector of Ottoman state is the head scholar of the Islamic schools. So he actually himself commented on Füsus, and then Molla Fenari, the first Shaykhul Islam. So I'm talking about the Ottoman law systems scholars. So they have, Molla Fenari actually shared Mevlana's and Ibn Arabi's thoughts in the field of law, including metaphysical and philosophical issues. So when people say in Ottoman states there is no philosophy, one should actually ask them, what do you understand from philosophy? And then accordingly, if peripatetic answer is given, then you could say, what you say we don't have. So we actually have philosophy. Ankaravi, Rusuvi Dede in Galata, Mevlihane, they have made commentaries on Hikmet. They have actually commented on Mesnevi. So in Ottoman state, when people say there is no philosophy, it should be very well defined. Maybe for not every tekke, dervish lodge I can say, but almost all of them can be seen, can be regarded as an academy of philosophy in terms of epistemology, ontology, if that's what they understand. So when we actually go to a sheikh, they talk about existence, they talk about embodiment. Maybe they don't call it philosophy, but conceptually, that's it. That's philosophy to me. Therefore, when people say there is no philosophy in the Ottoman, so it's the philosophy that you understand. A kind of philosophy that you understand is not there. So you may actually call it ilmi batin, but we have it here in Ottoman state. So the manifestation is actually coming from the batin to us, from the unseen to seen. If you don't understand this relationship, you cannot understand the existence. So we actually do need the seen scientists. We have actually the Zahiri sciences in order to be able to understand the Batini sciences. In Muhammad's Hadith Sharif, he says, there will be a time where the toe becomes the head and the head becomes the toe. So the real thing, the essence is actually the sciences of the unseen. of Batın. So if you ignore such sciences, then only the formality, the form sciences regarding form will be apparent. If there is no connection, if the connection is cut, then the physical and the sciences of forms will have no life. So in Ottoman era, where Sufi thinkers were educated, we can actually consider them a very significant period of commentators. Especially, I would like to address Western participants. We actually, especially in Europe, generally people work on Arabic texts because most texts were Sufi texts were in Arabic, or in Iranian geography. There are a lot of studies being conducted, which is the second period. So Persian texts are also extremely important. So Tasawwuf's lingua franca, one of the lingua franca is Persian. And all these scholars, they have actually written their works in Persian. But from both Arabic and Persian sources, Ottoman Empire actually inherited these two sources and practically established it within the context of schools or dervish lodges. So that's what we have done in the Ottoman period. So this is a very frequent experience, and that's why in our contemplative world we could see Ibn Arabi in Arabic world, but in Anatolia, in Ottoman states, we have Ibn Arabi teachings in our tekke life. So, and we try to train human beings in the light of İbn Arabi.
Tabii ki lütfen yanlış anlaşılmasın. Yani Malezya takımı da
Malaysia, the subcontinent, the Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, North Africa. Of course, there is tasawwuf. There are tasawwufi essences there. And in such a general system, they are a part of the system. But since we step on this geography after Arabic and after Persian, since we can't actually consider Malaysian, please don't misunderstand me, I don't want to externalize them, but since we live in this geography, so after Arabic and Persian, Ottoman Turkish, the way of Ottoman Sufism could actually also be observed, especially by young Western academicians, because the sources from Arabic era have almost been finished. Maybe there is a very rare manuscript that is not studied. So many fields in that field have already been studied. So I'm not saying, everything is finished, but there is still an open door. The same goes for Persian as well. There have been a lot of studies in Persian texts in Sufism. However, in Ottoman Turkish, have not been studied very comprehensively by Western studies. Generally, Western scholars, they don't study Turkish, Ottoman Turkish. Since they don't know that Turkish, they don't have an access to many Turkish texts. For example, İsmail Hakkı Bursevi has got a lot of wonderful studies, and in terms of esoteric interpretation of automatic political system, for example, a thesis called like that would be marvelous. From Ismail Ankaravi, for example, there are a lot of wonderful texts written in Ottoman Turkish. So even though Mevlana wrote in Persian, but practically in India, in Iran, his way of living is not that prevalent, whereas here in Anatolia, starting from Yemen to Kırım, from Sarajevo to Tabriz, there are
Gerek sanatıyla, gerekse
Mevlevi
kanıyla
where both Sufi art and Sufi texts were studied. So it's the cuisine culture. If actually even only the cuisine culture could be analyzed, this could even be very enriching for scholars. In Hacı Bektaşi culture, for example, similarly, bravery, the concept of bravery, a soldier who is actually attained God. So not only soldier, but also an attainer. So it's actually a combination of both the seen and the unseen. So this is the maximum progress when these two are combined. And in Alperen's we have that. And Ghazali supports this idea. So Kemal, perfection, is actually the intersection of the Zahir and the Batin. So a Civan Mert, a bravery model. Unfortunately, in modern Turkey, we may only appeal to visuality of our young people. We just try to bombard them with knowledge and visions and so forth with all these mobile phones. So perhaps if we can actually teach how to do our Seyri Suluk, then we can be more successful. Because ahlak, beautiful conduct, means to be painted fully. So in our education, like in our tradition, for years ago, should be formatted in such a way, and then very beautiful models will come out. So in Ottoman state Sufi way of thinking, especially we have also categorized, Ottoman way of Ottoman way of thinking. Now we have Molla Fenari, we have Taşköprüzade Ahmet Efendi. If you actually, he's a scholar, he's not a sheikh of Tekka, he's a scholar who is an Islamic thinker, but look at how he has internalized tasawwuf. Look at how he puts tasawwuf into practice. I think those people who are dealing with divinity and theology, his text should be reread. And these texts should be really taken into consideration. Let me have one more minute. I'd like to close my speech by saying those who are looking for fields of study, subjects, themes, could very easily select texts from the Ottoman era. That doesn't mean that, you shouldn't select Persian texts. If you don't know the Turkish, we actually have in the Ottoman geography Ottoman scholars who wrote in Persian, for example, Ahmet Ilahi. So you can actually work that scholar. Konevi commentary is done in Persian. So if you don't know Turkish, Ottoman Turkish, you can actually also find some Arabic texts. If your Ottoman Turkish is much better, then there are also texts which you can work, which you can study. And there are still thousands of manuscripts which are kept untouched. So the professor from Higher Education Council has very nicely portrayed in her presentation the Tasawwuf departments in academia in 1994. That is the first time. We still don't have it in the world. First time in Turkey, higher education system, we have a department, an independent department in a university, and that's only in university. That's the first in the world. So we have tasawwuf as a separate department in 1994. So I was actually studying tasawwuf, but when I was a student, there was no such an independent department. So I would like to congratulate our Higher Education Council for that. In other countries, there are people who work on tasawwuf, but they do it under religious studies. But I don't think that there are independent departments on tasawwuf in foreign countries as well. So if you want to delve into tasawwuf, you have to be very careful, because you have to really delve deep into it. It's a very profound system. So if it becomes so prevalent, it may lose its meaning. So when we have, in the last 10 or 20 years, when we look at the thesis done in tasawwuf, you can see a great number. Not all of them are great works, but there is a very considerable attempt to be able to produce new theses. So take someone who has already studied İsmail Hakkı Bursevi or Ankaravi. So there are numerous commentators. So you can actually benefit from such texts. And you may want to actually work on the concept of Ottoman Sufism. So this is my wish to come true. I realize that we are very short of time. Thank you very much.
Now we're going to have our photo op, so please, if I could ask for your patience as chairs are placed. And I'd first like to invite our professors, and afterwards for our participants to also prepare themselves to come up on the stage as well. Toplu resim çekilecektir efendim. Sahneye sandalyeler yerleştirilecek. Ondan sonra önce hocalarımızı, sonra da katılımcılarımızı sahneye davet ediyorum lütfen. Sağ olun. Katılımcılarımız da lütfen sahneye gelebilirse. If our participants could also come to the stage, please. Please look at the cameraman by the cameras, sorry, the photographer by the cameras. Kameraların yanında duran fotoğrafçıya bakarsanız efendim lütfen.